What's good? Brian Tong here, and welcome to the Apple Bits for everything good and bad inside the world of Apple. Hey, we've got lots of good stuff in this video, and we're going to start with the iPhone 13. I know you want to hear about it because there have been plenty of reports that the notch is going to get smaller. Well, it could look this small after Greek repair provider iRepair posted what are purported photos of the new iPhone 13 front glass piece for the 5.4, 6.1, and 6.7 inch iPhone displays for 2021. Now you can see here the notch is clearly smaller in part because the earpiece speaker that's normally part of the notch has been moved up into the top bezel. So without the speaker grill in place, it actually looks like the new notch has its own notch. Not what you were expecting, huh? Now, earlier reports claimed the iPhone 13 notch could be smaller because the components would get consolidated. Well, this is the first time that we've seen alleged iPhone parts with this smaller notch, and up until now, it's been drawings of what it could be that came from John Prosser back in April of last year. Now, look, I'm happier that it's smaller, but in 2021, the iPhone still has a notch, and I'm still not a fan. See how good I was to, avoid another notch pun in there? I was gonna do it, but I held back to show you that I can be a better man. Believe it or not. In other quick iPhone related news, a note from the Elect says Samsung is planning to begin making the LTPO OLED displays in the first half of 2021 for the new iPhone. These displays use less power than the standard OLED displays and are the key component to finally allowing Apple to bring 120Hz refresh rate, the ProMotion that has been rumored for the higher tier phones for this year's iPhone 13 lineup. LG will be supplying the standard OLED panels for the non-Pro models that are expected to not have ProMotion. And then, this is how you know some sites are just thirsty for content. Wedbush analyst Dan Ives posted a report that Apple is on track to launch the iPhone 13 in late September, or it could be pushed out to early October. And that has pretty much always been the case in normal years, but to report something like that this early, it's basically like saying water is wet. But then some sites just couldn't help themselves and turned it into a 2-paragraph article because they just needed the clicks. Okay, and something that actually means a whole lot more for Apple users, the latest batch of developer betas were released for iOS 14.5, iPadOS 14.5, watchOS 7.4, tvOS 14.5, and macOS, big sir, 11.3. It's the 5th beta released for all of them, and they are also available to the public, but the biggest news comes out of macOS 11.3 after 9to5Mac found references to new iMacs in the latest beta identified as iMac 21.1 and 21.2. Now, these two new Macs that were found use the code names J456 and J457, and those are the same two code names that were initially reported by Bloomberg's Mark Gurman back in January of this year. So we already know Apple has discontinued the iMac Pro. Apple has also recently discontinued the 512 gig and 1 terabyte solid state drive options for the 21.5 inch iMac that is currently on their site. And we haven't narrowed down the release time for the new Apple Silicon iMacs, but we are still expecting them sometime this year. Reports claim new 21.5 and 27-inch iMacs are incoming, but there are also reports that say at least one of the new models will come in a 23 or 24-inch size. We've seen the leaked renders based on reports that feature an all-new design that's similar to the Pro Display XDR with that thinner bezel, no chin at all, and then instead of a curved back, it will reportedly be completely flat with color options that resemble the current iPad Air colors. Now, the new iMacs are expected to be the Apple product that sees the biggest design change in 2021, and I am excited to see them. Okay, we still got a lot more to talk about, but before we do that, let's take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video, Storyblocks. If you're creating content like me, you can use Storyblocks for your own YouTube channel or for clients and video pitches. If you need any kind of B-roll you can think of, they have a library of over 1 million royalty-free stock assets. That includes B-roll shots, some great-looking drone shots. There's templates for Photoshop, Premiere, and Final Cut, or still images, and even royalty-free music to elevate your content. Now, if you want to simulate a breaking news story, you know how I like to do those corny things and fun stuff like that, Storyblocks has it all, and you can use them for commercial or personal use. With the unlimited all-access plan, you can download as much content as you want. There are no limits. There's an affordable subscription at every level, which allows you to stay on budget. And when you use Storyblocks footage in any of your works, you won't have to worry about anyone coming after you because you own the license with the plan. So if you're interested, go to the link in the description below or go to storyblocks.com/BrianTong to learn more about Storyblocks. All right, new iMacs weren't the only thing confirmed from the recent Apple software betas. We know new iPad Pros are just around the corner. We talked about them in the last video with reports that they will potentially bring an all-new Thunderbolt port and mini LED display. They're also expected to bring an all-new A14X processor, and 9to5Mac dug into the beta and found references to a new A14X chip inside of it because every Apple chip internally goes by a codename, and there's a GPU reference to a chip called 13G, which is not used on any current iOS device. The belief is that 13G is the new A14X processor based on the T8103, which 9to5Mac says is the code name for the Apple M1 chips used in the first Apple Silicon Macs. Now, there have been multiple reports claiming a new iPad Pro will be as fast as the first M1 chip released in the MacBook Air, 13-inch Pro, and the new Mac Mini. Now, 9to5Mac also discovered the code names for the new iPads will be J517, J518, J522, and J523. That's 4 models, with 2 of them likely being the cellular versions of the new 11-inch and 12.9-inch iPad Pros. And in case you need reminding, the HomePod is still dead. I mean, I've been saying it for the past couple of weeks or now. Or is it? Well, in a report, Mark Gurman goes on to say Apple was working on an updated version of the HomePod for release in 2022 before it discontinued the larger one. Now, he doesn't say if there's still a chance we even see it, but he adds that Apple has been developing new speakers with screens and cameras like the Google Nest Hub, Amazon Echo Show, or the Facebook Portal. Now, he just threw it in there and really gave us no idea how far along they are with it, and says a launch isn't happening anytime soon because a digital frame assistant and video conferencing device is really something that people in the Apple ecosystem were hoping for a few years ago after every company pretty much released one, especially when FaceTime, it was just like a synonymous name with video calling on your phone or mobile device for a long time, and it still really is if you're currently in the ecosystem. So maybe they can make a bigger splash in this market if they try, but the video screen assistant as an essential piece of home tech just hasn't taken off. Mac Rumors contributor Steve Moser found references inside the recent tvOS 14.5 beta for FaceTime and iMessage frameworks along with audio and video capture. That might not make sense for it to be in tvOS since it doesn't have a camera, but the HomePod uses tvOS for its software, and that means FaceTime, messages, and video and image capturing could be part of a future HomePod with the screen and camera. So that would indicate, at the very least, right, Apple is testing out or working on potential concepts, but Gurman says there are no plans for launch anytime in the near future. But does the idea of this product get you excited at all? Because if there was any company that I actually trust with an exposed camera in my house, it would be Apple because of how they treat privacy, and my entire extended family is also in the ecosystem, so those would be reasons to consider a device like this. But then all those same things that plagued the HomePod would plague this. You got a mediocre Siri voice assistant, limited compatibility with smart home devices. Its speaker will not be able to sound as good as the original HomePod purely because of its design. It won't be compatible with all the major music services, and then it won't have a Bluetooth streaming option either. So it's still just as limited there, and it would be a less impressive sounding HomePod with a display for FaceTime. And for me, I'm just going to use an iPhone or iPad that I already have handy. Now, the HomePod Mini, that's not going away. It's still here, but it could get some new functionality after a teardown revealed that the Mini has an unused secret sensor that can measure the temperature and humidity of a room and could bring new features to the product. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman first reported that Apple has internally discussed using the sensor to determine a room's temperature and humidity so that internet-connected thermostats can adjust different parts of a home based on their current conditions. They could bring this new functionality in a future software update, but there's no indication that they will anytime soon. It's always nice to get more features, don't get me wrong, but that is still not a selling point that makes this a significantly more appealing device for me. And before we go, look, we've got to recognize and celebrate the 20th anniversary of Mac OS X. Man, I remember when Apple first announced it, there was no YouTube, so I remember like at shops where you see some people would debate if it was Mac OS X or Mac OS 10. I mean, it was so different. It was so new. And at the time, I had an iBook G3 special edition graphite, the clamshell, and I loaded Mac OS 10 on it. And I just remember thinking like, damn, this is the future. And right, no other computers really, you couldn't really run it well on others. We had the Mac OS dock. That was a game changer for me. Down the road, Quick Look is still one of the features I use every day. And then hot corners, I always use those. So I'm that kid person that still has a banner from the promotion at a local shop hanging in the closet in my bedroom at my parents' house. I guess I could send you a picture, but here's what everyone might not know about this, okay? Mac OS 10 was born from the Next Step operating system that is really the core of Mac OS 10. And that Next Step OS came from the company Next that Apple acquired in 1997 for $429 million to help really usher in the next generation of the Mac. Oh yeah, maybe I forgot this point. Next was also the company Steve Jobs founded when he left Apple, and the acquisition then brought him back as an Apple advisor, which then led him to eventually reclaiming his title as CEO and transform Apple as we know it. Now that code that runs on the Mac also runs on all of Apple's devices, so its DNA lives everywhere in some way, shape, or form in the ecosystem. So when you think of Mac OS 10, 20 years, okay, it's directly linked to the return of Steve Jobs and then Apple becoming one of the world's largest companies ever. So I also thought this would be a fun way to celebrate. Check out this collection of every default Mac OS 10 wallpaper that you can download in a 5K resolution thanks to 512 pixels. I'm putting the link on screen here for you, and then feel free to support his work as well. But this is just a cool collection to have, and there's some really good classic ones in there. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this video. If you like what you see, give me that thumbs up, subs up, and hit that notification bell, ding, to get all my videos when they drop. And if you want more Apple goodness, you can check out my Apple Bits XL audio podcast. Get the latest deep dive with all these stories and new ones every week with special guests. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Take care and be safe. Peace.